So I guess I should start by saying that I'm Kevin, 32 years old, and I've been married to Emily, or Deborah, depending on who you ask, for 8 years. Yeah, 8 years. A lot of people say it's a solid number, but lately, I've been questioning that myself. I'm an attorney, and on paper, everything looks pretty good. I've worked hard, built a decent career, and Emily was always by my side, supporting me through the ups and downs. She was my ride or die, the one I'd share my victories with, the one I leaned on after a rough day. Or at least that's how it was supposed to be. The first thing that should have raised a red flag was her birthday. Now, let me tell you something about birthdays. Emily's birthdays were sacred. Every year, I'd go all out, thoughtful surprises, intimate dinner plans, personal touches. I knew what she liked. I knew what would make her smile. This year, though, it was different. It was almost like she wasn't even interested in celebrating. The vibe was off from the morning. Normally, she would be excited about the little surprises I'd planned. But this time, she barely looked up from her phone when I handed her the gift, just a quick thanks and a weak smile. Even when I tried to make the day special, took her to that cozy cafe she loves, planned a nice dinner at home, she just wasn't engaged. She wasn't really there with me. And I'm not the type to get all insecure over nothing, but there was this distance. I felt it. She told me that she had to work on her birthday, which was strange because she never worked on her birthday before. And if there was one thing I knew about Emily, it's that she wasn't married to her job. She liked to unwind, to relax, to celebrate, so hearing she was busy was a bit of a slap in the face. The whole thing didn't sit right with me, but I shrugged it off. I thought maybe she was just having an off day. But as the hours went by, the feeling of something being off only grew stronger. As the evening came, I got a message from her. Something like, "I'm having dinner with a coworker, don't wait up." That was strange too. Emily rarely did that. Dinner with a coworker, I mean. If she was working late, she'd just grab a bite and then head home. But she didn't say much else. I asked her if everything was okay, and she just replied with a dry, "Yes, everything's fine. Just working." I tried not to overthink it, but something told me I had to know more. Maybe I was being paranoid, but I felt like there was something she wasn't telling me. And that's when I made a decision I didn't expect to make. I decided to follow her. I didn't really plan on following her, but once that gut feeling took hold, I couldn't shake it. So I slipped on a jacket, grabbed my keys, and quietly slipped out the door. I wasn't sure what I was looking for, but I needed to know. I couldn't just sit at home, wondering if my instincts were right or if I was blowing things out of proportion. I followed her discreetly, staying a good distance behind. She took a left turn off our street, heading towards a trendy part of town that I knew had a few upscale restaurants. It wasn't like her to dine out alone, especially in such a nice spot. We weren't exactly rich, but we had a comfortable life. She preferred low-key, cozy spots, nothing fancy. As I parked across the street from the restaurant she entered, I saw her walk in with another guy. Now, I don't want to sound dramatic, but the moment I saw that, something inside me snapped. This wasn't just any guy either. I recognized him. His name was Mike, and he worked in the same department as Emily. I'd met him a couple of times at work events. A nice guy, sure, but there was always this underlying tension between him and me. Something off in the way he looked at Emily, like he was waiting for the right moment to make a move. I didn't like it, but I didn't say anything. She was always professional, and I trusted her. But now, seeing them together like this? It didn't feel right. I sat there in my car for a while, just watching. I know, it sounds like something out of a movie, but I couldn't help it. I needed to know. Eventually, they sat down at a table by the window, and that's when it hit me, how close they were. Not just physically close, but the way they interacted. They were laughing too easily, touching each other's arms like it was nothing. At one point, he leaned in a little too close, and she didn't pull back. Instead, she smiled and leaned in closer. I tried to convince myself it was nothing. Maybe they were just friends, right? But then, as they sat there, he touched her face lightly after she laughed at something he said. It was so intimate. Not the kind of touch I'd see between a guy and his friend, but something else. A touch that said more than words ever could. The longer I watched, the more it hit me. This wasn't a work dinner. This was something else. Something I wasn't a part of. And that's when I decided I couldn't sit back anymore. I got out of the car, walked toward the restaurant, and pushed open the door. I didn't think about what I was doing. There was just this cold rage inside me that needed to be let out. I saw Emily's face freeze when she noticed me, her eyes widening, the way you'd react when caught in the act. She quickly straightened up, but it was too late. I walked right up to the table, my heart pounding in my chest. Emily looked at me, almost panicked, while Mike stared at me like a deer caught in headlights. I didn't even say a word to him at first, just looked at Emily. I couldn't bring myself to speak, but she broke the silence. "Kevin, what are you doing here?" Her voice was shaky, but she tried to cover it with that usual calm tone she used when she was trying to act like everything was fine. "I was about to ask you the same thing," I said, my voice colder than I intended. "What's going on here, Emily? A work dinner, huh?" She opened her mouth to speak, but she couldn't form the words. I could see her trying to come up with some explanation, but it wasn't coming. Finally, Mike spoke up, trying to defuse the tension, but I wasn't interested in hearing him out. I turned to him and said, "You're not helping." Then, I focused on Emily again. "Is this why you've been acting weird lately? You've been avoiding me for weeks. Your birthday? You were acting like I was some stranger. And now this? You didn't even bother to tell me you were having dinner with him." She winced, her eyes darting away from me, and I saw a flash of guilt in her eyes, but she quickly covered it up with an excuse. "Kevin, it's not what you think. I'm just trying to figure things out. It's not like that between us." "Really?" I said, cutting her off. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks pretty damn like that." She shifted uncomfortably, looking at Mike for help, but he didn't say a word. He just sat there, awkwardly shifting his gaze between us, like he was waiting for the storm to pass. Then, Emily finally spoke, her voice small and defensive. "I didn't want to hurt you, Kevin. I just didn't know how to tell you." "Tell me what?" I asked, my fists clenched. "That you've been lying to me this whole time? That you've been, whatever this is." She hesitated again, and it was all I needed to hear. I knew then. This wasn't an innocent dinner. This was betrayal. I was done. I couldn't stay there any longer. It felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. I stood up, glaring at her one last time, and said, "I'm done, Emily. I'm done pretending everything's fine when it clearly isn't. I don't know what this is, but I can't keep living a lie." With that, I turned and walked out of the restaurant, leaving her behind. The realization hit me as I stepped onto the street. I was done. I didn't even stop walking. I didn't look back, not once. It felt like I was walking through some fog, just moving on autopilot, as if my body knew what had just happened before my mind could catch up. My chest felt tight, my head was spinning, but my legs kept moving. The shock of what I'd just seen, what I'd just heard, was starting to settle in. I reached my car, got in, and slammed the door shut. For a second, I just sat there, breathing hard, trying to make sense of everything. My fingers gripped the steering wheel so tight I thought it might snap in half. Emily's face, Mike's face, they kept flashing in my mind, over and over. She didn't even try to explain herself properly. The excuse she gave didn't even feel real. It was all lies, more of the same, like when she told me she was busy on her birthday, like when she'd been so distant these past few weeks. This wasn't just about a dinner. This was about everything leading up to it, all the small cracks that had been forming in our marriage that I hadn't seen before. She'd been pulling away, and I had been too blind to notice. But now I saw it all. I couldn't stop myself. I pulled out my phone and called her. My heart was pounding as the phone rang. I needed answers, needed to hear her say something, anything, that could make this make sense. She picked up on the third ring. "Kevin," she said, her voice soft, almost like she didn't want to pick up, but she had no choice. "Don't Kevin me, Emily," I snapped. "What the hell is going on? What were you doing with him? With Mike?" "I told you it's not what you think," she started, but I cut her off. "You've been telling me that for weeks now, Emily. It's not what you think." "Well, it's pretty damn obvious now, isn't it?" There was silence on the other end of the line. I could practically hear her trying to find the words, but I didn't give her the chance to speak. "Tell me the truth, Emily. I saw you. I saw everything. Don't you dare lie to me again." The line was dead quiet for a few seconds. And then, she said something that made my stomach twist. "Kevin, I'm sorry. I didn't know how to. I didn't want to hurt you. I'm sorry. I let out a bitter laugh. You didn't know how to tell me? You didn't want to hurt me? You've been lying to me for God knows how long, and now you're sorry? You've got to be kidding me. I paused, taking in a shaky breath. My chest hurt, like something inside was breaking. Emily, I don't even know who you are anymore. You're not the woman I married. I could hear her trying to choke back tears on the other end of the line, but I wasn't going to let her off the hook. Don't cry to me now. You've had plenty of chances to tell me the truth. Now I'm just done. Her voice cracked as she tried to speak, but I wasn't listening anymore. I can't keep doing this. I can't keep pretending like we're okay. You made your choice tonight. And I'm making mine now. We're over, Emily. There was a long pause, and for a split second, I thought she might beg me to come back, that she'd fight for us. But she didn't. Instead, she whispered, I never meant for things to go this far, Kevin. But I understand. If that's what you want. And that was it. No fight. No real regret. Just acceptance. I hung up before she could say anything else. I didn't want to hear her excuses. I didn't want to hear how sorry she was anymore. I was done. The weight of it all, the betrayal, the lies, the emptiness, it hit me like a ton of bricks. I put my car in gear and drove. I had no particular destination, but I needed to get away. I drove aimlessly for hours, my mind spinning, until the roads blurred together. I knew I needed to figure out what to do next, but I had no idea where to start. I had to face facts. Emily had chosen Mike. She'd made her decision long before tonight. And now I had to make mine. I needed a plan. I couldn't stay in this house, in this marriage. It was too toxic, too broken. I was suffocating. I needed to break free. But what did that look like? What did moving on from this nightmare even mean? I didn't know yet. But I was damn sure I wouldn't let her, or him, destroy me any further. I wasn't going to beg for an explanation. I wasn't going to wait around for some half-hearted apology. No. I was walking away. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was finally in control of my own life again. It was time to start over. The thought of filing for divorce made my stomach twist, but I knew it had to be done. I didn't want to live in a lie anymore. I wasn't going to waste another minute on someone who didn't value me. I knew it wasn't going to be easy. It never is. But I also knew that I couldn't keep living in the shadow of a marriage. I was done. And this time, there was no going back. No more lies. No more pretending. It was time to take control. And that's exactly what I planned to do. The days after the restaurant were a blur. I didn't want to go back home right away, but eventually, I had to. I had to face it. The house that had once felt like a home was now just a reminder of everything that had gone wrong. The walls seemed to close in on me, and the emptiness of the place mirrored the emptiness inside me. I didn't know how to talk to Emily, and honestly, I didn't think I needed to anymore. What was there to say? She had already made her choice. The trust was gone, the love felt like a distant memory, and everything had been shattered in one night. The next morning, I got up early. I went to work, but I couldn't focus. Every minute at the office felt like torture. Every time I tried to read over case notes, I saw her face, heard her voice. The guilt from the night before, the look she gave me when I confronted her, it haunted me. I couldn't do this anymore. By the afternoon, I'd made up my mind. I called my lawyer, an old friend I trusted, someone who had helped me navigate all sorts of legal hurdles over the years. I didn't want to waste time. I was done waiting. "You ready for this, Kevin?" he asked when I called him. "I'm ready," I said. "I need the papers drawn up. I want to file for divorce." I could hear the hesitation in his voice, but he didn't question me. He knew the situation well enough. He'd seen me through breakups before, but this was something different. "You sure, man? I know it's been rough. But you don't have to rush into this if you're not 100% sure." "I'm sure," I said, my voice firm. "I've made up my mind." We talked through the details. He asked if I'd tried counseling or talked to Emily about it, but I told him it was too late for that. What was the point of counseling when one person had already checked out? What was the point of talking when I knew everything she said from here on out would be a lie? It didn't take long for him to prepare the papers. The following day, they were ready. The thick envelope sat on my desk like a weight, a finality I wasn't sure I was prepared for. But it had to be done. That evening, I came home to find Emily sitting in the living room, her eyes tired, her face drawn. She didn't say anything at first. She just looked at me, like she was waiting for me to speak, waiting for me to offer some kind of explanation. I didn't have one. I walked past her and grabbed the envelope from my desk, holding it in front of her. I could feel the tension in the air as she slowly stood up. "Kevin," she started, her voice almost too soft to hear. "What's this?" I looked at her, but I didn't feel anything anymore. The hurt was still there, yes, but the anger, the frustration, the betrayal, they overshadowed it all now. "It's over, Emily," I said. "I can't keep living like this. I'm done." Her face twisted in confusion, and for a split second, I saw panic in her eyes. "Done? What do you mean, done?" "I mean I'm filing for divorce. I've already made the arrangements," I said. "You can't keep treating me like this. You can't keep lying to me and then expect me to just pretend everything's okay. This isn't a marriage anymore." She took a step back, shaking her head, her eyes wide. "Kevin, please, this isn't what it looks like. I've made mistakes, I know that, but we can fix this. We can work through it. Please just don't do this." I could see the panic in her voice, and for a moment, I almost felt a flicker of sympathy for her. But it didn't last. It was too late for sympathy. The lies had already built up too high, and there was no way to tear them down. "No, Emily. It's done," I said, the words coming out cold, final. "You had your chance. We both did." She dropped her head, tears welling in her eyes, but I didn't flinch. I couldn't. I wasn't about to let myself get sucked back in. She had made her choice. "I'll have the papers filed tomorrow," I continued. "I don't want any more excuses. I just want out." And with that, I turned and left the room. I spent the rest of the evening at a friend's place, just trying to get some space, trying to process it all. I didn't want to be around Emily anymore. The house felt suffocating, like it was just a cage for all the broken pieces of a marriage that had crumbled beyond repair. As I sat there, talking to my friend about everything that had happened, I realized something. This wasn't just about Emily. It was about me too. I had let myself be caught up in her lies. I had let myself stay in a toxic relationship, hoping things would get better, pretending like everything was fine. I had ignored the signs, ignored the cracks, because I didn't want to face the reality of what was happening. But now, I was facing it head-on. And it was time to take control of my life again. I wasn't going to be a doormat anymore. I wasn't going to sit around waiting for someone who didn't care about me. I wasn't going to waste any more time in a marriage that was already dead. I was walking away. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was finally doing what was best for me. The next few days felt like they were happening in slow motion. Every time I woke up, it hit me all over again. My life was changing, and I couldn't go back. I had made a choice, and Emily had made hers. There was no turning back from this. The divorce papers were filed. My lawyer said everything was straightforward. We wouldn't need to drag things out, but I knew it was never going to be easy. The reality of splitting everything, of untangling 8 years of life together, was overwhelming. But honestly, as the days passed, I found myself feeling less and less sad about it. More numb, more resigned. It wasn't like before when Emily and I would talk about our dreams, our future. Now it felt like we were strangers, like we had been for months. We barely spoke to each other anymore, except for the occasional awkward exchange about logistics, who was getting the couch, the dog, which bills we were splitting. I don't know what I expected when I filed. I guess I thought there would be some huge confrontation, a dramatic moment where we'd finally lay everything out and hash out all the hurt. But no. It was just quiet. Too quiet. Almost too civilized. I think that's what hurt the most. There was no fire left between us. No fight, no passion. Just a dull ache of what had been lost. Emily didn't fight me on the divorce, not at first. She didn't beg me to stay. She didn't even seem that angry. She was just defeated. The way I felt too. A week passed. I moved some of my stuff into a small apartment, just a temporary place until I figured out what I wanted. It wasn't much, just a few boxes, a couple of chairs, my old bed, and some clothes. I didn't need anything else. But the apartment felt like a reflection of where I was in my life now, barely anything left. It wasn't just the physical space that felt empty. It was everything. I had given up so much to this marriage to Emily, and now here I was in a tiny place, trying to put the pieces of my life back together. I couldn't help but wonder if she felt the same. If, deep down, she regretted it. Or if she was already moving on, doing the same thing I was, trying to rebuild, trying to find peace after everything had crumbled. But I couldn't think about her anymore. I couldn't dwell on what Emily was doing or how she felt. This was about me now. I had to move forward, or I'd be stuck in the same loop of pain and regret. One night, a few days after I moved in, I ran into my divorce lawyer at a bar. He was a cool guy, laid back, and we ended up having a few drinks together. He didn't push me to talk about the case, but after a couple rounds, I found myself opening up. "Is this how it always feels, man?" I asked him, not sure if I wanted the answer. "Feels like what?" he asked, taking another sip of his beer. "Like everything's just gone, like nothing matters anymore," I said. "Like I'm just starting over but not really." He nodded, understanding. "Yeah man. Divorce is a weird thing. It's like a slow-motion train wreck. It feels like it's the end of the world at first. But after a while, you start to see the pieces come together again. It just takes time. You'll be all right." I wasn't sure if I believed him, but I appreciated the honesty. At least he wasn't sugarcoating it. He was right about one thing though: I was trying to rebuild, trying to piece my life back together. It wasn't easy, and it didn't feel like I had any direction, but I couldn't stay in that limbo forever. I spent the next few days at my new place, cleaning up, sorting through old things, trying to get my bearings. And then, as if things couldn't get more complicated, I got a call from Virginia, Emily's lawyer. At first, I didn't recognize the name. But then it clicked. Virginia was the attorney who worked with Emily's lawyer. I had met her once at a work function, but we hadn't spoken much. "Kevin," her voice was professional, calm, but something about it felt off. "I'm calling in regards to your divorce case. I just wanted to touch base and see if we could arrange a meeting to discuss the next steps." I hesitated for a second, then nodded, even though she couldn't see me. "Sure. When's good for you?" "We can meet tomorrow afternoon," she said. "Does 3 p.m. work for you?" I agreed, though I wasn't sure what I was walking into. It wasn't like I expected Emily to suddenly show up with Virginia to beg me to take her back, but I couldn't shake the weird feeling in my gut. The next day, I showed up at the office where Virginia worked. It was a sleek, glass-walled building with shiny floors and a cold, impersonal vibe. I signed in at the front desk and was led to a conference room. When Virginia walked in, I almost didn't recognize her at first. She was wearing a business suit, but there was something about her demeanor, something sharp, something confident, that immediately made me feel like I was in the presence of someone who knew exactly what they were doing. We sat down, and she got right to the point. "I'm here to discuss the terms of your divorce. We need to figure out how we're going to divide assets, custody, the works. I assume you're not contesting anything." I shook my head. "No. I'm not contesting anything. I just want out. Clean break." She nodded, flipping through her papers. "Good. That'll make things easier." For the next hour, she went through the paperwork with me. She was clear, direct, but something felt off. It wasn't just the matter-of-fact tone of her voice. It was the way she looked at me, like she was studying me, sizing me up. Before the meeting ended, she stood up to shake my hand. "I'll make sure everything is filed by the end of the week. You should have your final divorce papers soon. In the meantime, I'll be in touch if anything changes." As I left her office, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't the last time I'd be seeing Virginia. There was something about her that stuck with me. Maybe it was the way she seemed so composed, so in control of the situation. But whatever it was, I felt like this was just the beginning. There were more changes coming, more surprises ahead. But for now, I just had to focus on moving forward. I wasn't sure what my future looked like, but I knew one thing for sure: I was done being dragged down by the past. It was time to reclaim my life. The week passed faster than I expected, but it still felt like I was walking through a fog. Every day felt like I was just going through the motions: work, the gym, some time to myself, then back to the same cycle again. My apartment, though small, had started to feel like a refuge. There was a kind of peace to it, even if it was lonely. But as much as I tried to stay focused on myself, there were days where I couldn't shake the feeling of something hanging in the air, something unresolved, something I couldn't quite put my finger on. Maybe it was because of the way things had ended with Emily. Maybe it was the uncertainty about the divorce and what was next. Or maybe it was just that I didn't want to admit how much I missed the life I'd built with her, even if it was all a lie. Then, just as I thought things couldn't get more complicated, I got an email. It was from Virginia. I didn't know why it threw me off. Maybe because I'd expected everything to go smoothly, to keep the whole divorce process as quiet and unemotional as possible. But when I saw her name in my inbox, it sent a weird shiver down my spine. The email was professional, but there was a line that stood out to me. I would appreciate a follow-up conversation with you regarding some of the details in your divorce agreement. Please let me know when you're free to talk. I was caught off guard. Why would she want to follow up? I had already agreed to everything. I wasn't contesting a single thing. Why was she asking for another conversation? I stared at the screen, feeling a mix of curiosity and unease. I wasn't sure if I should reach out or just let it go. But I decided to respond, if only to get the clarity I needed. We set up a call for the next day. When I dialed in, Virginia's voice was calm as usual. "Kevin, thanks for taking the time to speak with me again. I wanted to go over some minor details about your case, but there's something else we should discuss as well." I sat up straighter. "What's going on? Is there an issue with the papers?" No issues with the paperwork," she said smoothly. "But I've been reviewing some of the communications between your wife and her counsel, and there are some things I think you should be aware of." That caught my attention. "What do you mean?" "Well, to put it simply, there's been some back and forth between Emily and her lawyer that suggests she might be seeking a larger share of the assets than we initially discussed," Virginia said, her tone still smooth but a little more measured now. "She's requesting a few more things, and I think you should be prepared." I felt my stomach drop. "What things?" "We had an agreement already. I thought everything was settled." Virginia paused for a second, then spoke with more careful consideration. "I don't want to alarm you, but there's a possibility she might contest the division of property. It's a strategic move, but it's one I think she's seriously considering." I was silent for a long moment, processing what she was saying. The last thing I needed was more drama. Emily had already done enough damage. Now, it seemed like she was trying to drag this out even further. "I can't believe she's doing this," I muttered, half to myself. Virginia's voice softened a little. "I understand it's frustrating. But I want to be clear, I'm not taking sides here. My role is just to help you understand the situation and what your options are. You can choose to contest her request, but I'll leave that decision up to you." I ran a hand through my hair, frustrated and caught off guard. What does this mean? How much more time is this going to take? "Well, if she insists on pushing this, we could be looking at more paperwork and possibly mediation," Virginia said. "But again, you don't have to agree to anything unless you want to. If you're sure you want to move forward with the original terms, I can help make that happen. I just need your direction on this." I took a deep breath. This wasn't how I imagined the process going. Emily was supposed to just sign the papers and walk away. Instead, she was trying to drag me back into her world of games and manipulation. I didn't want to play that game. I didn't want to get caught up in her drama. But I knew I had to be strategic too. "I'll stick with the original terms," I told Virginia, my voice firm. "I'm not going to let her drag me back into all this." "Understood," Virginia said. "I'll take care of it from here, Kevin. I'll make sure everything goes through smoothly. Just make sure to let me know if anything changes on your end." I thanked her and hung up, feeling a weight on my chest. Just when I thought I was getting my life together, Emily found a way to pull me back in. It was like I couldn't escape her, even if we were supposed to be done. The thought of her trying to take more from me, trying to get something out of this whole situation, left a bitter taste in my mouth. But I wasn't going to let her win. I'd come this far. I wasn't going to let her drag me into a fight I didn't want. No matter what she did next, I was walking away. I was done. The only problem was, the whole thing had started to feel like a game of chess. And Virginia? She was no longer just Emily's lawyer. Something about her made me feel like she had an agenda of her own. Maybe I was just paranoid. But something told me that I hadn't seen the last of her. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized, I wasn't the only one playing a game. A few days after that call with Virginia, I tried to keep my mind off the divorce and everything surrounding it. I focused on work, took some long walks to clear my head, and slowly began filling the silence in my apartment with small new routines. But no matter how hard I tried to push things to the back of my mind, I kept thinking about the phone call, about what Virginia had said. Emily's lawyer hadn't been in touch with me since that conversation. Part of me expected her to call me out of the blue, pushing for something more, for more control, more complications. But nothing came. Silence. It was like the calm before the storm. I needed a break. I was tired of the chaos and the constant reminder of my past. So on a random Friday afternoon, I made an impulsive decision. I booked a trip. A weekend away to just breathe, get away from the city, and hopefully gain some clarity. The trip wasn't fancy, just a cabin up in the mountains, a couple of hours outside the city. It was exactly what I needed, peace and solitude. I didn't tell anyone I was going, no need for more questions, no need for explanations. I just needed time to think. I spent most of the weekend hiking, fishing, and drinking in the quiet. The fresh air did wonders for my mind, and after a couple of days, I started to feel the tension slip away from my shoulders. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could just exist, without all the noise and stress. But of course, the peace was short-lived. I was coming back to the cabin on Sunday afternoon when I saw her. Virginia. At first, I didn't recognize her. She was standing outside the small general store in town, talking to a man I didn't know. My first instinct was to keep walking, mind my own business, but something about the scene caught me off guard. I knew her the second I saw her face. What was she doing here? In the middle of nowhere, miles from the city, with no reason to be there. I stood there for a few moments, trying to process it, before I made the decision to approach her. As I walked toward her, she noticed me and straightened up, her eyes locking on mine with that same cold, calculating look she had during our last conversation. "Kevin," she said, her voice as smooth as ever, though a bit surprised. "What are you doing here?" I didn't waste time with pleasantries. "What are you doing here?" I asked bluntly. "I don't remember mentioning anything about this place to you." Her eyes shifted, but she recovered quickly, a polite smile playing on her lips. "I didn't expect to see you here. I was just taking a weekend to clear my head too." She glanced over at the man next to her, then back at me. "He's a colleague. Nothing to worry about." I couldn't help but raise an eyebrow. I didn't buy it for a second. There was no reason for her to be here, especially not in a town this small, where the chances of running into me were far too high. "Funny," I said, trying to keep my cool. "I didn't think lawyers needed weekends away." She smiled, but it wasn't the same professional smile I was used to. This one felt like something else, more personal, almost flirtatious. "Everyone needs a break, Kevin. Even me." I paused, unsure of how to respond. She wasn't here by accident. There was no way. I felt something shift in the air, like she was testing me, trying to gauge how I'd react. I didn't want to fall for it. "Look, Virginia," I said, my voice steady but firm, "I'm not here for small talk. And I don't know why you're here, but this doesn't feel right." She leaned in a little closer, her eyes narrowing slightly, as if calculating her next words carefully. "I understand if you're feeling a little off balance. But I'm here to make sure things go smoothly. I told you I'd handle your case, and I will. No games, no complications." I studied her face, trying to make sense of it all. There was something off about this entire situation, but I couldn't quite put my finger on it. Maybe it was the way she looked at me, the way she seemed to be constantly trying to stay in control. "Well, I didn't come here to play games either," I said, my voice a little sharper than I intended. "I'm moving on with my life, Virginia. I don't need anything else from you." Her smile faltered for a second, and I could tell she didn't like being on the receiving end of that. But then she quickly recovered. "I'm just making sure we're on the same page. I'm not here to disrupt your life. I'm just doing my job. But remember, Kevin, things aren't always as simple as they seem." I gave her a cold look. "I'm well aware of that." I could feel my heart pounding a little harder now. Was she threatening me? Was this part of some strategy one didn't understand? I didn't know, but I had a gut feeling that I was dealing with something more than just a lawyer. "I think we're done here," I said, taking a step back. "Enjoy the rest of your weekend, Virginia. But just so you know, I'm not interested in whatever you're trying to sell." I turned around, walking away from her without another word. I didn't want to stick around any longer. Something was off about this whole situation, and I wasn't going to let it drag me back into the mess I just started to climb out of. But as I walked away, a thought lingered in my mind. Why had she come here? What was her angle? And as much as I wanted to ignore it, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was about to be caught up in something I wasn't prepared for. Virginia was no longer just Emily's lawyer. She had her own agenda, and I was starting to realize that I wasn't done with her yet. This was far from over. After that strange encounter with Virginia, I couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger was unfolding. Why had she shown up in the middle of nowhere, miles from the city? It wasn't just a coincidence, and I wasn't buying her story about needing a break. There was something off about the whole thing. I didn't let it consume me, though. I had come out to the cabin to clear my head, and I wasn't going to let Virginia mess that up. I finished the weekend, took a deep breath, and drove back to the city with a bit of clarity. The weight from the divorce wasn't completely gone, but at least I felt like I was finally in control of my life again. Back home, I tried to focus on work and rebuilding my routine. I went to the gym more, started taking care of myself in ways I had neglected before. Slowly, the fog started to lift. I felt a little lighter each day. But I still couldn't shake the thought of Virginia. Something in the way she looked at me, the way she stayed so composed. I couldn't get rid of the feeling that I was missing something important. It was like she was playing a game, and I wasn't sure of the rules. I tried not to overthink it. But then the phone rang. It was Virginia. Again. I wasn't sure if I was ready to hear what she had to say, but I picked up anyway. "Kevin," she said, her voice smooth but with a hint of something else. "I wanted to follow up on our last conversation. We need to talk about some of the next steps in the divorce." I could feel my stomach tighten. It wasn't just about paperwork anymore. This wasn't going to be as easy as I thought. "All right," I said, trying to keep my voice neutral. "What's next?" And just like that, I realized I was in deeper than I thought. The game wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The call with Virginia left me feeling unsettled, but I did my best to put it out of my mind for the rest of the evening. As much as I wanted to ignore it, I knew I couldn't. There was something nagging at the back of my mind. She wasn't just Emily's lawyer anymore. I had this feeling that she was involved in something bigger than she let on. The next day, I decided to call her back. I couldn't keep waiting for her to make the first move. I needed answers. So I dialed the number and waited, tapping my fingers nervously against my desk as it rang. When she picked up, her voice was calm, just like before. "Kevin, thanks for calling back. I thought we should touch base on the next steps." "Yeah, let's talk," I said, trying to keep my tone steady. "What's going on? What exactly are we moving forward with here?" There was a slight pause on the other end before she replied. "Well, I've been reviewing some of the financials with Emily's side, and there are a few things that need to be discussed. It's just routine at this point, but I want to make sure you're prepared." "Prepared for what?" I asked, my patience thinning. I thought everything was already settled. I agreed to the terms. "Don't worry," she said, almost too smoothly. "It's nothing to panic about, Kevin. I just need to make sure you're aware of the options that are still on the table. Emily's lawyer is pushing for a few more adjustments, but you have the choice to accept them or not. We'll make sure you're protected." I wasn't sure I liked how she said that. "We'll make sure you're protected." It felt a little too familiar, like she was speaking to me like I was a client of hers, but also something more. I hesitated. What kind of adjustments? "I don't want any more surprises." "There's no need to worry," Virginia assured me. "It's just some fine-tuning of the asset division. Nothing too extreme, but if Emily insists, we might need to go into mediation." "Mediation," I repeated, feeling a knot tighten in my stomach. "Again, it's nothing to worry about. It's just a formality," she continued. "But I'd recommend you get your financial documents together just in case. We'll want everything lined up in the event that we do need to go that route." I leaned back in my chair, trying to process what she was saying. Part of me wanted to hang up and just wash my hands of the entire thing. But I knew I had to keep control. I couldn't let Emily or anyone else drag me through this for any longer than I had to. "All right," I said, trying to mask the frustration in my voice. "I'll get everything ready. But I want to be clear, if this drags on any longer, I'm pulling the plug. I want this done. No more games." There was a pause, and when she spoke again, her tone was just a little softer. I understand, Kevin. You'll have everything you need, and I'll make sure this doesn't go on longer than necessary. I'm here to make sure things move smoothly. I could tell she was lying, or at least twisting the truth. She wasn't looking out for my best interests. She was looking out for something else, something bigger. But I had to play along. For now. Thanks, I said, though I didn't really mean it. I'll wait for your update. After hanging up, I sat there for a while, staring at the phone in my hand, trying to get a grip on my emotions. The past few weeks had been a whirlwind of unexpected twists and turns, and I had no idea how much further this could go. But one thing was certain, I wasn't going to let it break me. I had to keep pushing forward. I spent the next few days gathering everything I needed, bank statements, tax returns, asset lists, just in case Virginia's words were more than just talk. It wasn't like I trusted her, but I didn't have much choice. If Emily was going to drag me through more hoops, then I'd be ready for whatever came next. But as I was preparing everything, something in my gut told me that I was about to face another curveball. I didn't know what it was, but I felt like the end of this chapter was near. Whatever Emily and Virginia were planning, it wasn't going to work. I wasn't the same guy I was when this all started. I had learned too much about myself, about the lies, about how to fight back. And then, just as I was about to head to my lawyer's office with the final documents, I got a text. It was from Emily. "I think it's time we talk," it read. "I don't want this to end like this. Can we meet?" I stared at the screen for a moment, feeling a strange mix of anger and curiosity. What was this? A last-ditch attempt at guilt-tripping me? Or was this her trying to regain some control? I thought about it for a moment before deciding to reply. "No," I typed. "I'm done. I've moved on." And that was it. I sent it. No more waiting. No more hoping for a change. The divorce was going through, and I was done. I wasn't going to be dragged back into her world of lies and manipulation. I was walking away. For the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of peace. It wasn't easy, and it wasn't over yet, but I knew one thing for sure: this was my final step. I was free.